Hey Wargamers, with the release of the Rogue Trader expansion for Kill Team, it got me thinking about what other types of niche factions we might see brought into 40k via Kill Team. The thing about both the factions and the Rogue Trader expansion is that they're not currently represented in the 40k line, and therefore that's a whole new set of models, a whole new set of rules, and yes, you can use them in Kill Team, but Games Workshop has also allowed you to use them in 40k by releasing these mini codices alongside the Rogue Trader expansion. So I think this is really exciting. It opens up a lot of possibilities for new armies, new factions, things to come in, particularly things that require a few new models, but you really couldn't build a whole codex around it. You wouldn't want to see a whole Rogue Trader army potentially. That might be a little bit too much, but you can comfortably do it in the Kill Team scale. And so things like that, I think, are something that we might see more of going forward. And one army like that I've been looking forward to is Kroot Mercenaries. So let's talk about that. Let's see what Kroot Mercenaries might look like in Kill Team, kind of just a speculative thing. But if you like this video, if this is your kind of thing, make sure you hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any of my upcoming Kroot content, Tau content, or other 40k related stuff. Alright, so Kroot have a few things going for them right off the bat. One is that they're not in Kill Team currently. You can't take Kroot in Tau Kill Teams, and I think that makes a lot of sense because the way that Kroot function in the Tau Empire is not that they just integrate with Tau units and Tau society. No, they are still separate. They're auxiliaries. They function as independent units within the Tau army, not as intimately integrated members of those units. You don't see Kroot Fire Warriors, for example, right? You see Kroot Carnivores by themselves. And that's an important distinction. So you wouldn't see a Kroot Carnivore running around with a bunch of Fire Warriors in a Kill Team for that reason. They're not part of the same unit, and so it doesn't really make sense for a game focused on individual units like Kill Team to have Kroot integrated with Tau. So I think this means that having Kroot Mercenaries brought in as their own Kill Team faction makes a lot of sense. Games Workshop might have already been thinking about this when they designed the Tau Kill Team faction, because they kept Tau and Kroot separate in that, explicitly there's no Kroot in Kill Team, but maybe they also had that in mind because they wanted to release Kroot as their own faction somewhere down the line. Another thing that Kroot has going for it is that with the Rogue Trader expansion, we saw the introduction of a diversity of new units that we haven't seen before, sculpts that we haven't seen before, and this means that probably if they're going to be releasing a Kroot Kill Team faction, it's going to have some new models. It's not just going to be Kroot Carnivores. Instead, they're going to want to bring the new hotness and release some new sculpts and stuff like that. So maybe they would incorporate some of the old Kroot Carnivores. Maybe they would do a new sculpt for that as well. But really, we're looking at some new novel sculpts, things that aren't represented in the line already, and Kroot already have a great basis for what those sculpts could be based on the old Kroot Mercenaries chapter approved list. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, basically we used to have chapter approved in a different format than it is today, and they would release army lists periodically, and one of those army lists was Kroot Mercenaries. In fact, I have that army list from the original White Dwarf issue that I received. So that's really what I think is going to be a fundamental influence on what a Kroot Kill Team could look like. Now, you might see some other things in that list, things that aren't in this chapter approved list, like maybe Kroot Shaman would be something that we see, something where, in the Kill Team version, they have a penalty to nerve tests for nearby enemy units or something like that, and then maybe in 40k they do something with leadership or unit sizes or something like that. And that type of unit is something that I think would fit in really nicely, because we wouldn't necessarily see a one-to-one translation from the chapter approved to the Kill Team version or the mini Codex version. So we'd want to see some new stuff too, and I think something like a Shaman makes a lot of sense. Other things too, I don't know, use your imagination, but yeah, so I think let's look at the chapter approved codex before I just go on this rant about other things that might be in it that aren't in the chapter approved. Let's actually look at the chapter approved book and see what that might look like. So the thing about the chapter approved Codex is that it's meant to be a Codex, right? It has HQ, troops, fast attack, elite, heavy support. And so there's a diversity of units in here, and I don't think we'd want to necessarily see all of these in a Kill Team mini Codex, just because there would probably be some redundancy in the rule set for Kill Team and in 8th edition 40K. Redundancy that we wouldn't have in earlier editions of 40K because of the diversity of special rules. And so now that we have a smaller number of special rules, a smaller number of like specialized mechanics, then some of these things probably wouldn't make sense to have both in a Kroot mini codex. With that said, let's take a look at the chapter approved Kroot list and see how it might translate into 40K. So in general, you had HQ units that included either a Master Shaper, which had some minor psychic abilities, but was otherwise just a really buff Shaper. You had a Shaper Council, which might be an interesting way to incorporate multiple Shapers into a single unit in 40K, but seems unlikely to see a translation into Kill Team for that reason. There's just too many models. For elite choices, we had Headhunter Kindred, which were Kroot with poison attacks, and Stalker Kindred, which could ambush or basically deep strike. For troops, we just had Kroot Carnivores, and for fast attack, we had Vultures, which were Kroot with wings or jump packs, and then Kroot Hounds and Tracker Kindred, which Tracker Kindred are Narlock Riders, which used to be a Forge World model. I think it was a fantastic model, and if we brought it back for Kill Team, I think there would be much rejoicing in the streets. So I really like the Narlock model, and I really would like to see that back in Kill Team. And I think that's a great way to bring it back into the 40K universe too. For heavy support, we have Krootox Riders and also Hunter Kindred, which were Kroot with heavier guns. And then they also had these little Panji traps, which were traps that you could set up on the battlefield. I don't think that's likely to see a translation, at least in terms of a actual model or unit, but that would be a really interesting way to bring in Kroot stratagems, as you could use a stratagem to set up these traps, like for one command point, set up a trap somewhere on the board, mark it mark it with a marker, or write it down somewhere, say like this is where the trap is, and then you can spring it, or maybe more likely just like D3 mortal wounds on a unit at some point. So that seems probably the more likely is just the mortal wound track, but if you're looking for a more narrative thing, sure, why not add an actual trap. But yeah, so let's take a look at how these things might actually translate, and I think there's a few choices that are most likely to appear in a Kill Team unit. One is that just normal carnivores are probably going to be in there, but also things like stalkers seem to apply relatively well. They could have, a -1 to hit or something like that, kind of like stealth suits, or, something to represent their stalkery nature. In actual games of 40K, they could be able to deep strike or infiltrate, something that we are really lacking right now in Kroot units is the ability to infiltrate or even outflank would be fantastic for stalkers. Vultures, I think it makes a lot of sense for them just to have an increased movement speed, or maybe have the fly keyword. Well, probably have the fly keyword. And then Narlock Riders could just be Kroot with normal weaponry, but also riding a Narlock, right? So they'd be faster, they'd be a little bit more durable than Kroot Carnivores, not quite as mobile as Vultures, but give you kind of a jack-of-all-trades scenario there. And I think the combination of those 4 units, Carnivores, Stalkers, Vultures, and Narlock Riders, would make a really nice Kill Team. And so that's what I would hope to see in a Kroot Kill Team Codex. It's about the right number of units. You could add Shapers in there as well, although potentially in the Kill Team context, Shapers might be a little bit too high up in the leadership structure. They might be too advanced to really be bothered with the workings of an individual Kill Team. And so for that reason, maybe we are just looking at kind of these footmen or these foot units instead. Yeah. So will Games Workshop do this? Who knows? Well, Games Workshop probably knows. My guess is that they probably determined that there's just not enough demand for it. But I had the same kind of feeling when Genestealer Cults came out and when Harlequins came out. I said, okay, now is the time for a Kroot Mercenaries Codex, because they're starting to do these sub-factions. They're starting to do these more small-scale niche factions that Kroot Mercenaries certainly fit into. And we never saw it, right? We didn't see it, and we might not still see it. But hopefully, Kill Team is the way that we could do it. And even within the 40K context, there's more in this chapter approved codex that would lend itself to translation there. They have built-in faction rules or sub-faction rules in terms of adaptations. Like if Kroot eat a bunch of orcs, then they get +1 strength, that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of room to play with, and hopefully Games Workshop seizes that opportunity and produces a really cool product like they've been doing with Kill Team. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited about a potential Kroot Mercenaries Codex? Do you think it's not going to happen? Whatever are your thoughts on it, please let me know. And as always, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Max Harrison, No Excuses Panda, Tao Oswell, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Stephen Cohen, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Benjamin Dosimus, RP, Julian Peck, Yuhai Penguin, Andy M. Young, Peter Benjamin Parker, and Giovanni DiMaggio.